What is that sound? That thing that looks like a skull, the goat skull, it's got heat on it.
Many people who study Bigfoot are quick to call out fake sightings. They are careful about what they believe. But sometimes, even the most careful people find stories that are too strange to ignore. One man, whose name remains unknown, set out for a peaceful getaway in the thick woods of Washington. He stayed in a remote cabin, hoping to relax and enjoy some time away from the world. But what started as a calm trip turned into a chilling experience he would never forget. The first encounter in the woods.
As the sound of the footsteps approached closer, I knew whatever it was standing behind me right there at the top of the trail.
On the second night at the cabin, everything changed. As the fire crackled inside, the man started to feel uneasy. At first, he thought it was just the normal sounds of an old wooden cabin at night. But soon, something strange happened. He noticed a handprint on the frosted window. It wasn't just any handprint. It was from outside the cabin. When he looked closer, he saw a face beyond the window. It was framed by wild, matted hair. The face was massive and not human. Its deep-set eyes glowed faintly, as if lit from within. The man was frozen in fear. He knew this was not a bear or any other animal he could think of. The creature stood tall, with a posture that looked human, but also alien. It watched him closely. Desperate to capture the moment, the man grabbed his phone. His hands shook as he tried to take pictures. The first few shots were blurry, but he kept snapping more. With each flash, the creature's face became clearer. It stayed there, curious and almost amused by his actions. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving the man alone with his racing heart. The shocking photographs.
Me and him went up there. Whenever he got up into the cat roads, there laid the chain with the collar. Whatever it was tearing the heads off the dogs and just taking the bodies and leaving the heads laying there.
Wow.
The man could not sleep for the rest of the night. Every small sound outside, every creak of the cabin made him think the creature was coming back. When morning finally arrived, he checked his photos. Most of them were blurry and hard to understand, but a few showed something clear. A massive, powerful figure that defied explanation. Sharing the images was not an easy choice. The man knew that Bigfoot sightings often led to ridicule. Still, he decided the world needed to see what he had witnessed. To protect his identity, he uploaded the photos to online communities focused on unexplained phenomena. The response was immediate and explosive. Believers praised the photos as the clearest proof of Bigfoot ever seen. Skeptics examined every pixel, looking for signs of forgery. Debates raged across forums and social media. Many noticed that the creature's size, posture, and glowing eyes matched descriptions from past sightings. Some even pointed out how the creature resembled the Sasquatch stories told by indigenous tribes in the Pacific Northwest, where Bigfoot is seen as a guardian of the forest. However, not everyone was convinced. Skeptics asked why there was no video footage and why there were no other witnesses. They claimed it could be a well-made hoax. Still, for those who believed, the man's account added important evidence that something extraordinary might be hiding in the forests. A pattern of sightings.
And I came out here with a cup of coffee just to relax in the evening. And I heard it, and I thought, what was that? So I got my camera out, and that's when I made the video, hoping that it would do it again, and it did.
The man's sighting was not the only strange encounter in Washington state. Stories about Bigfoot had been shared for centuries, making Washington a hotspot for such reports. One woman named Barb had her own history with Bigfoot. Her fascination started in the 1970s during a camping trip near Mount St. Helens. Rangers at the park told stories about mysterious ape-like creatures living in the area. These tales sparked her lifelong curiosity. Decades later, while walking near her cabin, Barb found a massive footprint pressed deep into the dirt. This discovery reignited her belief that the creature was real. Over the years, Barb found other strange signs too. She saw snapped treetops and arranged branches that looked like they were left by an intelligent being. She even witnessed glowing orbs moving through the forest at night. One of Barb's most shocking experiences came when she captured an image of what she believed was a cloaking Sasquatch. The figure seemed to shift in and out of visibility, something that defied all normal logic. Barb's experiences were not isolated. Other witnesses like Joseph shared terrifying encounters. Joseph was hiking in Olympic National Park with his girlfriend and their dog when they saw a massive orange-haired creature carrying a bloody carcass. Their dog, once brave, was left traumatized after the encounter. Despite differences in the details, all these accounts shared common features. Witnesses described the creatures as huge, elusive, and able to inspire deep fear in anyone who saw them. Skepticism and doubt.
My best friend growing up used to live right up on the edge of the mountain. And we had some pretty interesting experiences as kids that really threw us for a loop growing up. We got chased out of the woods once.
Even with the mounting stories, skepticism remained strong. Critics continued to dismiss the sightings as folklore, hoaxes, or simple misunderstandings. They pointed to the lack of clear video evidence. They argued that the photos could be faked. They questioned why so few people ever caught more than a glimpse of the creature. Yet the people who had seen Bigfoot firsthand spoke of it differently. For them, the creature was real and terrifying. They were not trying to convince others, they simply wanted to share what they had experienced. As the arguments continued, the mystery of Bigfoot grew even larger. Whether real or imagined, Bigfoot captured a deep human fear of the unknown and a fascination with the wild places that still hide their secrets. The legend grows stronger. The forest still holds many secrets. For some, Bigfoot is just a myth, a story passed down to explain strange sounds in the night. For others, Bigfoot is a living creature, a reminder that humans have not yet discovered everything in the world. The man's shocking photographs, Barb's countless encounters, and Joseph's terrifying sighting all add to a growing body of strange evidence. Even if proof remains out of reach, the stories continue. They remind us that there are still places on Earth where mystery thrives, places where, if you are lucky or unlucky, you might just come face to face with something beyond belief. While the forests of Washington hid many strange stories, even darker tales came from another wild place. Far to the north, in the icy wilderness of Alaska, there was a town with a history full of terror. It was called Portlock, and its story was not just about sightings, but about attacks, fear, and total abandonment. The abandoned town of Portlock. Portlock was a remote place in Alaska. It wasn't just another small town hidden in the woods. Its history was soaked in mystery and fear. To understand why Portlock was abandoned, the story goes back centuries. In the late 1700s, British explorer Nathaniel Portlock arrived at the site. He found a beautiful landscape full of fish and game. It seemed like the perfect place to settle. But something was wrong. Portlock and his crew discovered an abandoned native village. The structures were still standing. Yet, there was not a single person left. It was as if the people had simply vanished into thin air.
From 100 to a 0 overnight. Everybody left.
Despite the creepy mystery, Portlock and his men decided to stay and use the land's rich resources. But things quickly went bad. Crew members began to fall ill. They experienced strange symptoms, not just sickness, but an overwhelming fear that seemed to come from the land itself. The fear grew stronger every day. Eventually, the crew begged Portlock to leave. He agreed, and they abandoned the settlement, never discovering what had driven the original villagers away. The attacks begin.
Portlock was cursed and Bigfoot's place and nobody goes there.
Portlock's troubles were not unique. About 6 years earlier, Spanish explorers had visited the same bay. They also found the abandoned native village and thought it would be a good place to settle. But like the British, the Spanish soon faced strange illnesses and a deep fear that would not go away. They heard strange noises from the woods, sounds that seemed to creep closer at night. Terrified and sick, they too fled the site. For nearly 100 years, Portlock stayed empty. Then, in the 1860s, a group of Sugpiaq natives decided to try again. They were drawn by the promise of great fishing and hunting. At first, life in the new village was good. They had plenty of food and were happy. But soon, something terrifying started happening. The settlers were attacked by what they described as cannibalistic giants. These creatures were enormous, savage, and not human. They raided the village night after night. The settlers tried to defend themselves, but the giants were too strong and too determined. Whenever the forest was full of game, the giants stayed away. But when food grew scarce, they returned, looking for human prey. The attacks became so bad that by 1905, the settlers had no choice. They abandoned Portlock again, leaving behind their homes and the terrifying legend. A brief return, then more terror. It wasn't until 1921 that another group dared to settle in Portlock. This time, it was the Alutiiq people who brought modern industry with them. They built a salmon cannery, a post office, a school, and hoped to make Portlock a thriving town. Alutiiq knew the dark stories. They had heard about the giants, which they called the Nantinaq. Some translated the name to mean half man, half beast. Others simply called it giant hairy thing. Determined to stay safe, they made strict rules. They set a curfew, posted armed guards, and avoided wandering into the woods or fog. For a while, it seemed to work. The town grew, and life in Portlock seemed peaceful. But over time, people grew careless. The strict rules were loosened. Residents began venturing deeper into the woods and staying out later. That is when the attacks started again. The horror returns. In 1931, a logger named Andrew ventured deeper into the forest than anyone before. His friends never saw him alive again. When a search party went looking for him, they found a horrifying scene. Andrew's body had been crushed. His sled, which was far too heavy for any human to lift alone, had been thrown far from his body. His dogs had been torn apart. The gruesome discovery shocked the town. It was clear that whatever had killed Andrew was not human. Not long after, another resident, Tom Larson, reported seeing a massive, hairy creature standing on the beach. It was too large to be human, but moved in a way that seemed eerily human. Larson had a rifle aimed at the creature, but found himself unable to pull the trigger. His story added to the growing fear in Portlock. More and more hunters and prospectors disappeared. Bodies were found mauled, clawed, or torn apart in ways no natural predator could explain. Even as guards were posted and curfews enforced, the attacks did not stop. The final abandonment. By 1950, the fear had reached a breaking point. In a sudden, almost overnight decision, the entire population fled. Only one man, a post office worker, stayed behind for a short time. Even he left soon after, driven away by the sound of something heavy and two-legged walking through the empty streets at night. Portlock was abandoned again, and this time, for good. But the mystery of what haunted the town remained. For decades afterward, hunters who dared venture into the area reported hearing footsteps behind them, growls in the dark, and seeing giant footprints over 18 inches long. One group found tracks that led to a patch of crushed grass where it seemed a moose had been killed. The moose's tracks ended, but the giant footprints continued into the mountains. Skeptics tried to explain it away. Some said bears could be responsible. Others suggested natural accidents. But none of the theories fully explained the crushed sleds, the torn bodies, or the giant human-like tracks. The native Alutiiq people spoke of the Nantinaq with respect and fear. They said it was intelligent, territorial, and dangerous. Even today, travelers passing through the area tread carefully, following the old rules to avoid drawing attention. Even though Portlock had been abandoned for decades, the stories did not end. The thick forests and lonely trails around the town still seemed to hold something dark. Hunters, hikers, and even paramedics who traveled through the area continued to report strange and terrifying encounters. The fear that had once driven entire groups of people away still lived on in those who dared to enter the abandoned town. Hunters faced the unknown. In 1973, 3 hunters found themselves caught in a powerful storm while exploring the wilds near Portlock. They decided to take shelter in one of the town's abandoned buildings. That night, they heard something circling their camp. It growled and made sounds that none of them could understand. It was not an ordinary animal. Each man swore that the creature walked on 2 legs, not 4. The sounds kept them awake all night. Whatever was out there was strong, smart, and not afraid of them. In another report from the 1990s, a hunter told of being chased through the woods by something he could not see. He could clearly hear the fast, heavy footsteps behind him. They were not the footsteps of a bear or any other known animal. They sounded human, but much bigger and heavier. Even without seeing it, the hunter knew he had to run for his life. Old memories, lasting fear. One of the most chilling stories came from a paramedic in 1990. He was treating an elderly Alutiiq man in a nearby town. During a casual conversation, the paramedic mentioned that he had recently been near Portlock. The reaction was immediate and frightening. The old man grabbed the paramedic's shirt and, with clear terror in his eyes, asked if he had seen it or if it had bothered him. The fear was not just from old legends. It was real and deep, the kind that comes from direct experience. Even after decades away from Portlock, the memory of whatever had haunted that place stayed strong inside the old man, searching for explanations. Despite all these terrifying reports, some people continued to look for logical answers. Skeptics said that the legend of the Nantinaq, the half-man, half-beast creature, might just be a story. Maybe it was made up to scare children into staying close to home. Or maybe it was a way to explain the dangers of living in such a wild and remote place. Still, even the most skeptical minds struggled with the facts. Something had caused multiple groups, explorers, natives, and modern settlers, to flee Portlock again and again. Something had left behind crushed sleds, giant footprints, and horribly mutilated bodies. One scientific idea suggested that infrasound could be part of the mystery. Infrasound is low-frequency sound that cannot be heard by humans, but can cause feelings of fear, sickness, and confusion. Predators like tigers use infrasound to scare and weaken their prey. Maybe something in the forests around Portlock used infrasound, either naturally or through its roars and sounds, causing the settlers and explorers to become sick and terrified. This idea explained some of the feelings of dread and confusion, but it did not explain the crushed skulls, missing people, and torn-apart bodies. The forest holds its secrets. Even other logical explanations fell short. Some said the terrain around Portlock, the dense forests, the mountains, the rocky paths, could hide a large predator for a very long time. The rough land would make it easy for something to stay hidden and hard for humans to find clear evidence. But that still left many questions unanswered. Why would an ordinary predator dismember people the way the Portlock victims were found? Why would there be giant human-like footprints, not paw prints or claw marks? The deeper people looked into the mystery, the more confusing it became. Even today, people who pass near Portlock report uneasy feelings, strange sounds, and eerie movements in the trees. Some hunters refuse to go near it at all. Whether it was a supernatural creature, an unknown predator, or something even stranger, Portlock's story refuses to fade away. Nature's shield for the unknown. The deep forests of Washington and the wild landscapes of Alaska are not easy places for people to explore. Thick trees block the view. Mountains rise like walls. Fog rolls in, making even familiar paths disappear. In places like these, anything could live unseen. The rough terrain provides the perfect cover for creatures that do not want to be found. Huge trees, endless rivers, and rocky cliffs create hiding places that even experienced hunters and hikers cannot reach. Weather conditions also add to the challenge. Heavy rain, thick snow, and chilling winds sweep across these regions, erasing tracks and masking sounds. This harsh environment acts like a natural shield, protecting whatever roams the forest from human discovery. Even today, large parts of these wilderness areas remain unexplored. If Bigfoot and creatures like the Nantinaq exist, the forests and mountains are their strongest allies. They are hidden not just by distance, but by the very nature of the wild world itself. Mysteries that refuse to fade. The photographs taken by the man in Washington's forests marked the beginning of a powerful story. His images captured something that could not easily be explained. They showed a creature with glowing eyes, massive size, and a human-like shape that matched tales told for hundreds of years. When he shared the photos with the world, he became part of something much bigger. His story connected with others, like Barb's lifetime of encounters and Joseph's terrifying hike in Olympic National Park. These were not isolated events. They were pieces of a larger puzzle that spanned states, forests, and generations. Skeptics continued to argue. They pointed out the lack of video proof, the blurry photos, and the small number of witnesses. They suggested hoaxes or mistakes. Yet the man's experience, like so many others, would not simply disappear. It remained, like a stubborn shadow at the edge of human understanding. The deep woods of Washington and the thick forests of Olympic National Park seemed to protect something massive, something intelligent, something determined not to be caught. Far away, in Alaska's cold wilderness, the abandoned town of Portlock stood as another warning. Its dark history told of something worse than simple sightings. In Portlock, people didn't just see something, they disappeared. They were attacked. They fled and left everything behind. The fear that gripped Portlock's people was not based on blurry photos or strange feelings alone. It was based on real danger, real deaths, and real terror. Over and over, settlers tried to make a life there. And over, they were driven out by something they could not defeat. Even after the town was empty, the stories continued. Hunters who dared to enter the woods spoke of footsteps following them, growls in the night, and strange tracks that could not be explained. A moose brought down by an unseen force. Footprints over 18 inches long, leading into the mountains. In Portlock, even scientific explanations struggled. The idea that infrasound could cause feelings of fear and confusion made sense to some. After all, predators like tigers use such sounds to weaken their prey. Maybe something similar was happening in the forests around Portlock. But infrasound could not crush sleds, tear apart dogs, or dismembered human bodies. Other ideas blamed bears, accidents, or the dangers of living in a remote place. Yet no normal bear crushed heads or dragged sleds far from bodies. No normal predator left such massive humanoid tracks in the dirt. Even the native Alutiiq people, whose ancestors had lived there for generations, spoke of the Nantinaq, half man, half beast, a creature that was smart, dangerous, and not to be challenged. They had strict rules to stay safe. And when those rules were broken, people paid the price. The man who captured the shocking Bigfoot images could not have known how large his story would grow, but by sharing his experience, he added another voice to a mystery much older and deeper than any single person. Whether in Washington's green forests or Alaska's cold woods, the truth stayed just out of reach. The world remained full of places where the unknown ruled, where creatures might still watch from behind the trees, unseen but very real. The legend of Bigfoot and the terror of Portlock continued to live on because they spoke to something powerful inside people. A mix of fear, wonder, and respect for the wild places that humans cannot fully tame. In the end, the man's photographs were more than just images. They were a reminder that the earth still holds secrets, that mystery still walks among the trees, and that sometimes the scariest things are not the ones we make up, but the ones we almost see before they vanish into the dark.